Hello and welcome back to the SMITE Pro League here in Week 6 of Phase 2 in Season 9. And what an upset victory that we just got in our past matchup. And before we dive into the next matchup, I want to remind you guys about our good friends over at Prime Gaming. Make sure that you make the most of your Prime membership to get all those goodies that you were probably going to buy, but now you can get them delivered for free straight to your door as long as you got a Prime membership, as well as getting free games every single month, a new catalog of games, and a new arsenal of content in some of those other games. And that game that you were playing for free, well, hey, might be able to pick something up with Prime Gaming on there. So make sure that you get a Prime Gaming subscription. That way you can make the most out of it and step up your game. Why not? Thank you so much for Prime for being the title sponsor of Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. I'm J-Mac. I got Trelly joining me on the desk this time around. We're having to our third and final match of this triple header Sunday. We got to watch the number 7 seed take on the number 1 seed, and now with a at least same level of distance separating the seeds, it'll be the number 2 seed Olympus Bolts up against the number 8 seed Valhalla Valkyries.
Yeah, that was a good way of phrasing it. The same level of disparity is there. Coming into this matchup up until that point, you might have thought, like, there's no chance. But now we got some hope for the underdogs. I mean, I'm fired up.
Especially after a set like that, man. It's hard not to be excited for the rest of our day. So let's take a look at what the rest of the day is. It's just the one set. If you missed out, and if you're literally now just tuning in, and it sounded like I was making up facts from earlier, no, here the proof is on the screen. It's not even in the pudding. It's literally on your screen right here.
What if there's pudding on my screen?
Why would there be pudding on your screen? Why are you eating pudding above a monitor or laptop at this point, or a tablet or phone? Why are you such a messy eater, Trelly?
I'm sorry. I just got excited when I watched the Scarabs take on the Kings. I had to get some celebratory pudding. Either way, a fantastic set, and like I said, you gotta be hyped up leading into this matchup now. You gotta think like, the top. They could have some bleeding going on, Yeah,
2-0 for the Dragons, a 2-1 for the Solar Scarabs. And even though that didn't technically change the standings as a whole, still number 1 for the Camelot Kings, number 2 for the Solar Scarabs, or number 7 for the Solar Scarabs. It definitely keeps bringing back up that emphasis that every one of these teams are getting so much closer. Now as this phase is going on, as we start pushing over towards Masters, getting ready for Phase 3 later down the road, so many potential upsets that can come through. Talk about this one at least being the biggest one. But now we move on to our final set of the day, which could maybe even be a bigger upset if it does happen. Valhalla Valkyries and the Olympus Bolts, our third and final set of the day. And I think talking about the Valkyries is probably the way that we start this one out, Trelly, kind of as on the general more than anything else. I mean, this is a team that came into the league, was able to at least make some good strides, so that they were the top of the SCC for a pretty significant while, showed that they had the potential to come into the SPL. Have been struggling a little bit in their first phase. Phase number 2, though, we've been seeing remarkable improvements across the board for this team. Yeah,
that's sort of been the conversation, every time we get to one of these sets, right? When are the Valks going to be able to turn up? When are we going to see them get their first win? We definitely see, the hints of greatness. They're able to find kills. They're not just getting blanked every game. That's certainly not the case. They find some kills. They find their gold leads. I think where they continue to struggle is that late game 5v5, that late game team fight, where they're not able to close out, they're not able to play through these objectives as well as they probably would hope, but they certainly still have the ability to do so.
Yeah, they're able to find picks where they need to, whether it be off the back of their jungler or their solo lane. Even the dual lane has made some massive strides, especially kind of at the tail end of Phase 1 when we were finally able to get all 5 of the Valkyries in studio. The dual lane finally able to rejoin the rest of their party, and that's where we're starting to see a lot of step-ups for Gamma, a lot of step-ups for Wowy, and really been able to just show remarkable, adjustments across the board for themselves. Wowy even getting some confidence more than anything up in these little 1v1 matchups against his opposition, able to find some big solo kills out there. And speaking of Wowy, we have him standing by for our pregame interview, the Hunter for the Valhalla Valkyries. Good to have you in here. Thanks for coming by for the pregame interview. It's kind of hard sometimes being down at the bottom seed. You're now staring up over at the number 2 seed right now. What's on your mind as a team going up against the Olympus Bolts right now?
I mean, winning is always like on our mind and stuff, but I think right now, with like the meta changes and like with late game and stuff being so like important, I think it's more important for us to like try to get a whole bunch of small improvements as a team, kind of get things more cohesive and stuff like that. So I think we're going in just like, let's just try to play our best, figure all the small stuff, and then eventually it'll compound, and then
okay,
we're good to go.
I noticed you got a little accessory on your neck there. What's up with the green bead necklace there?
Yeah, shout outs to Gamma and Gamma's family.
Oh.
Yeah, it's something that he has. They gave it to him, and yeah, we're rocking it.
So what happens to the flannel? Is that replacing the flannel now? Because I remember you guys were wearing the matching flannel jackets, but I haven't seen those in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, those are for very important sets.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we'll see that by Masters time, but yeah,
Okay,
in the back
so
pocket.
all right, so maybe we'll see the Masters flannel come out there for your team, at least for the remainder of the phase. Is it kind of echoes still true what you were talking about this match against the Bolts, just still trying to work on the remainder of the small things for you guys as y'all prepare for Masters?
Yeah, that's kind of the main goal right now. Just keep improving, just keep trying to get things worked out and stuff like that. Yeah, that's kind of the name of the game.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming by for a pregame interview. Good luck in your set, and I'll let you back with the team.
Thanks.
Improvement, the name of the game, and that's something that we've been talking about. It's things that the fans at home have been talking about. The players on the whole is for a team like this to come up, not having any SPL experience. They were just jumping in from the SCC, have been taking that time to really get themselves going up there, and now at the league getting as competitive as it is, it's even becoming a larger step for the Valkyries to go through. And talk about now one of the largest steps they're going to have to take to try and find a win. The Olympus Bolts, their opposition facing off against them today, the number 2 seed, only has dropped a couple of sets throughout their portion of the phase. And the Olympus Bolts have just been looking hot, not just in phase number 1 where they took 2nd seed, not just in phase 2, but also back with the tracksuits again.
I was going to say that works on so many levels. And it's interesting the Valks have done away with their matching get-ups, the dual lane specifically, as the Olympus Bolts have picked up their matching tracksuits.
I think everybody else is starting to kind of go around it now.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out here. The flannels are gone, the tracksuits are in. Maybe this is just like the fashion side of the SMITE Pro League. We'll have to see. But I think you're right that it's a tough hill to climb if you are the Valks. And if you're the Bolts, this is one of those business as usual days. You should be coming into these matchups. You should be winning. You should be able to make as little mistakes as possible, right? And coming into a matchup like this, where your confidence should be through the roof, you just have to focus on not dropping early kills, not dropping objective fights, things of that nature. That's got to be the mindset if you're the Olympus Bolts 2nd seed coming into a matchup like this.
Yeah, I think maybe even like kind of dialing in towards the dual lane a little bit for these ones is going to be still a tough matchup for Wowy and Gamma for the Valkyries up against the Bolts, Jake, and BaRRaCCuDDa. We'll get to jump into the picks and bans for game number 1 between the Bolts and the Valkyries to see what breaks out. We've been seeing, as expected, tons of Chernobog bans, tons of Yemoja bans. Usually those 2 gods are not getting through. If they are, 9 times out of 10, they are finding wins. So if you're the Olympus Bolts in this case, Trelly, I gotta imagine you don't care about banning either of those ones. You're gonna leave those there and maybe throw some target bans out. And probably the player, at least to my mind, that a lot of players have been focusing more so on the Valkyries has been Kyrmi in the jungle.
Yeah, trying to get rid of the first blood opportunity, trying to get rid of the early aggression that Kyrmi can bring definitely has to be on your mind. Because if the Bolts are confident in their late game team fight, the only way that they could slip up is through the early picks. When you don't have your whole squad together, if Kyrmi's able to isolate anyone in the jungle, that sort of thing, give him a lot of kill potential. Erlang Shen, one of the premier picks that is able to do that. Other ones come to mind, and we know the Bolts just don't like facing Eset, just period. They don't want to face it, no matter who it's up against, so I think it's a smart pick thus far. And, if you've watched any of these matchups that the Bolts have been having, LASBRA's Dashi, that's just something that everyone's got to be taking away at the moment.
But the Valkyries may have made a small miscalculation. They ban away Osiris, Daji, and Chernobog. It's going to be Xing.
That's an 80% win rate. That's higher than Yemoja.
I mean, 79 in 24 games is pretty significant. I thought we were going to see Yemoja as a snap block for the Olympus Bolts. Now this one goes over to the Valks to try and pick it up because we know the flexibility of Xing. That could easily go solo lane. And that's if Awesome Jake wants to play it. The other 2 bans was that Eset and then the Vamana, at least for the Olympus Bolts. Huang, once again for BennyQ. It feels like this is BennyQ's new go-to god in the mid lane.
Yeah, certainly could be the case, and we also have to hold on to the possibility that it could go duo lane just because, and it looks like Nemesis is going to be picked up there. What?
Are we going to get a game where Yemoja's not even looked at all?
I mean, it certainly could be the possibility. When you look at the teams, the Leviathans and the Camelot Kings, Yemoja's so highly contested. When Jake's in the conversation, of course, Yemoja could be on the mind, but Xing's got the better win rate at the moment. And we saw, 71 or 72% for Yemoja? 79. The numbers don't lie. The Xing has been performing well, and I think a little bit easier to execute on as well, right? If you're making a bad Rivers Rebuke, you could ruin the whole team fight. But there's no bad Whirlwinds of Rage and Steel. You either get the pull or you don't. If you mess it up, oh well, you still have plenty of CC in the kit. So I think if you just want something that's easy to execute on and also when you see a Yemoja locked in, you know it's going to support. Xing holds on to that ambiguity a bit, so I like the way the Bolts have went with this. They don't have to put that much priority towards the Yemoja. And
judge.
given the fact that the Xing was already picked, if the Valks did want Yemoja, they didn't really have to pick it there. They still had the opportunity to grab it in this slot. Now we'll get to see if they really have some prioritization for it.
Very fair. Olorun, the next pickup alongside Fenrir for the Bolts, so something for LASBRA to get aggressive in the jungle and something rather safe for BaRRaCCuDDa with a lot of team fight presence. Drafted by the Bolts just now. Meanwhile, I look at the Valkyries, and I'm seeing pick potential. But Ganesh being the pick for the Valhalla Valkyries. And now we jump into the second wave of bans, and this will tell us, at least once the picks start coming through afterwards, whether the Xing is going over to Jake in the duo lane, or if it's going to be going into the solo lane for Haddix. Very curious as to how these next portions of the draft are going to be going with these bans. You know that mid lane is probably still an option. Venenu has been going towards the Hell a few more times as of late this phase. You imagine that might be something on the Valkyries' mind for a ban?
Yeah, it could be a possibility. You already have the Olorun locked in, so, given the draft, in my head, I'm thinking, send the Xing over to Jake. Give Haddix something that he can get very aggressive on, something fun. Maybe not King Arthur in specific because you're against Ganesh and spinning in the back line is always going to be canceled out, but something, that you're just going to be able to brawl with in that solo lane. Because Xing, that's a boring lane, right? It's not like Xing not great. He's great, but you're just furious roar on the wave, getting your HP 5, sitting under tower. You're not getting too active. So I imagine not exactly what Haddix is looking to play here, as the Ullr is going to be taken away. So that's just one of those picks that, is usually first pick. First ban. You just don't want to see the Ullr. So if you are going to let it get this through far into phase, might as well just throw a ban that way. And the Bolts are going to try and focus out Aqua because there's none of those picks are screaming Aquarius just yet. The Bellona is going to be taken away, as well as just giving some of that pressure to the solo lane. I think is a good place to look.
I just gotta imagine. I'm looking at this drop-off in bans. Obviously, 71% for Yemoja. The other 29% is pick. Same thing with Chernobog at the 70-30. And then 46% pick rate, or ban rate, I should say, for the Ullr. And I know that's not sitting at 100% right now. So that drop-off between the top two gods that are being banned in the SPL compared to their pickup rate, and even then, is just absolutely wild. AMC still up, by the way. That's another potential pick maybe that the Bolts could go to. Will be Ullr and Nox, so unsure where the Xing is going. We'll take a shot over at Jake with that pick. And Sun Wukong, a ban against BennyQ, which is a weird thing to still say.
Yep.
And then Bellona as well against the Valkyries. That opens up Chiron, who has been on a very significant rise in that duo lane.
Yeah, it seems like the Bolts aren't too convinced that the Huang's going over to BennyQ, and Wowy has played it before, and given the fact that Chiron was locked in, those are interchangeable. You could always put Huang in the mid lane, and BennyQ has played that as well, so the switch could always be possible, and it looks like with the Chiron locked in, they've cemented some long-range damage, right? They have the cleanse for Fenrir, and whenever that Ragnarok comes through, you can always just cleanse out. You don't have to waste your beads on that, and then you just have the long-range damage from Centaurus. With dueling dragons as well, the Valks, they don't have to dive in deep to these fights to make their damage known. And now we'll finally get to see what the Bolts are doing here at this draft. Given the fact that the Valks banned the Nox, they're not too convinced that's Jake on the Xing. Now that we see the Raven, I'm convinced that's Jake on the Xing, and that's going to be either the Fenrir or the Raven. More often than not, the Raven going into that solo lane for Haddix. And finally, one more pick will tell us if this is going to be bad on the Olorun or the AMC. Probably going to be picking that AMC mid lane.
AMC now for the Bolts. Raven secures that Xing. And with Ganesh locked in for the Valkyries, Trelly, this is a historic moment in Phase 2. We have an actual game with no Yemoja. Her 100% pick ban rate has been tarnished now.
Unless we see it right here.
and whether you throw Ganesh in the solo lane or something?
Man, I'm just saying.
Okay, we have seen Final K do it, but that was in a game with very, very little stakes to none, if I remember correctly.
Let's just wait until we see this locked in, and then the statistic becomes actually true.
I'm hitting the button already, saying that we are getting our 99% now on Yemoja. That leaves Chernobog, the only 100% pick ban god left in the SPL, assuming this Cthulhu does get locked in for the Valks. So, zooming away from the Yemoja discussion, I know I keep bringing it up a bit. It's just surprising with how much priority she has had. Let's talk about the team fight for these two teams. Valkyries feel like they've got quite a bit. They've got long-range damage from Chiron. They got close range from Cthulhu and Ganesh. How does that stack up against what the Bolts have in naming for themselves?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult because I feel as if the Valks come online pretty hard late game. You know, the Cthulhu can really do some damage in these team fights, but early on you're not going to have that Cthulhu because he's stuck in lane, whereas the Nemesis can get active early. Kyrmi can look for some ganks in the early, but LASBRA on the Fenrir is probably going to have that early potential just a little bit. You know, early on, your level 5 is super strong. If you find someone without beads, you're always going to have a decent opportunity to find a kill, or you can force the beats just fine. Then you got awesome Jake on the Xing Chen, World of Rain and Steel. So many gank opportunities. I imagine Gamma is going to have to be forced into those beats and still position himself quite well because Ganesha is going to be an easy kill up until level 12. Like, you could just always find some CC there. The Bolts have drafted a great composition for shredding through Cthulhu as well. They've got a decent bit of prod shred. Olorun's auto attacks are going to have a good time. From behind, Cthulhu's just going to run through them, right? But from ahead, Cthulhu's not going to have the tank stats to try and survive. He's getting auto attacked by so much damage. It's really one of those situations where you'd love to just get infinite farm and wait till level 20, but the Bolts probably won't let that happen.
So for the Valkyries then, to get themselves towards that late game, because as you say, it's slanted a little bit more towards that portion, where on the map, at least maybe for Kyrmi, should he try and establish some of that pressure? Does he go over towards mid to help out Benny? Well, we did see a clip with Wowy playing the Huang, so possible that this Huang is going to duo lane. But if you're going up against an Olorun and AMC, at least as a Nemesis, or maybe even we just talked about this Ravana early, we have seen teams try and shut that one down. For Kyrmi, and maybe for your money, at least for the Valkyries, where does Kyrmi start making those rotations to get his team up and going?
Yeah, it's difficult because you always want to say solo lane. Solo lane is where the least threat is going to be coming. You're only have to worry about one opponent unless the jungle's on the map somewhere. So it would be nice, but you're looking at the Ravana and the mitigations Ravana, and you never know where LASBRA is. So when there's constant vision, when you know where that Fenrir is, I think a good opportunity to try and force the Mystic Rush or a Relic of Swords could be in the solo lane. I just don't imagine Haddix ever making it easy because there's just no way to force any of that down. You know, you're not too afraid of the Cthulhu until later on in the game. So, the Ravana takes a while to get online, of course. You do want the Soul Eater sometimes. You want that mitigation style of build. So once you get a couple items, then you're safer in lane. If Kyrmi wants to find an early kill, I feel as if Olorun or AMC could both be great options, though. They're immobile. If you can force out a Relic or two, you've got some great range damage. So he definitely has options. It's not going to be easy for him. He's got to work for it.
Actually thinking about it now, the mitigation build with the Ravana had that sigil. Now with Lona's Mask being a starter item, maybe this does change things up for the Ravana, but we're ready to jump into game number 1 between the Olympus Bolts and the Valhalla Valkyries.
We'll see if we can get our second upset of the afternoon, if the Valhalla Valkyries can beat the Olympus Bolts. Nothing short of a massive upset here to end this week in the SPL. The Olympus Bolts score, still in studio, still in the banana jumpsuits. And hopefully this time for them, fares a bit better.
I feel like still for some of them, like when they still have the jacket on, it's 2 kill Bill for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm looking at BaRRA there, put a motorcycle helmet on him,
right.
And he could have just been a stunt double.
Right, could have been. No, it was actually.
It's actually him.
Yeah, it was not a stunt double.
He actually is the stunt double for Uma Thurman.
Right. I would love to see BaRRA.
How tall is Uma Thurman compared to BaRRA?
I have to imagine not that tall.
No.
BaRRA's a pretty tall dude. We'll find out though, Gore. I have to imagine you'll be on it.
Is it worth
a
it?
bit of a sneaky start here for the Olympus Bolts. A purple buff invade at level 1. And Jake and BaRRA happily accept the Invader's Curse. Walk at the Valhalla Valkyries purple buff when you can destroy it that fast. Why not? And so get both purples, one for Jake, one for BaRRA. And while we do joke about the banana suits, the Bolts are here to play. And a small play could make a big difference. I wonder how XP and stuff then changes. Because Wowy and Gamma will still be stuck at level 1 because they didn't get any of the XP from the purple. Should be a small chance. I don't know if it changes the lane, but maybe gives a bit of an advantage over to BaRRA and Jake.
Yeah, they're going to hit level 2 first in that lane, and that should give them some aggression, like the solo lane.
Aquarius low, so is Haddix. So Kyrmi has got damage. The slow is on to Haddix in the last dash through. The Valhalla Valkyries have grabbed themselves first blood. And look, if you don't want Haddix to get to late game and get all the mitigations and prots online, you kill him off at level 2. And Kyrmi had great eyes.
No, and if you can just replicate that, do that a few times, I think you're going to be pretty fine over there. And I think this is a good look for Kyrmi. I mean, the Valks as of late, a lot of where their success has been in this early game, they get a lot of those good fights, and I think they know how to put pressure on them. Obviously, losing the purple buff, I think at the very beginning isn't exactly what you want for you, but getting first blood on the other side of the map, getting Kyrmi specifically to have that first blood and kind of on the road, I think is going to be good for them. And again, you can just kind of sit here and do it over and over again until Haddix has ult.
Yeah, Haddix has teleport, not beads. Ha! LASBRA walks by, wait, what's going on here? And realizes Kyrmi is hanging out. So Haddix won't be caught off guard by this. LASBRA really wishing that he didn't have to jump over the wall, as Kyrmi and Aquarius are the two. A bit more lane pressure there. They will start up the blue buff invade now and drop the blue buff. So good plays from the Valkyries on the right side of the map, and Jake unsuccessful on his purple buff invade on left. The small micro plays outside of the purple buff invade of BaRRA and Jake at level 1 have all been for the Valhalla Valkyries.
I'm going to keep my eye on this gold, though, because it was like pushing towards 700 earlier after the first blood, and it's slowly closing up again. And that's always been, you know, especially early on, like that's going to be minion wave to minion wave, right? It's not super indicative of anything. But watching it close gap, to me, indicates that the bolts are getting, even though, you know, like Valks are maybe even invading some, you're getting a little more from the bolts in terms of overall farm. And so it's small things like that that have been problems for not just the Valks up until today. I would have said it for the Scarabs as well. I think the Scarabs showcased that their capabilities have definitely changed in the last set. They were looking really good, but I think the Valks, that's still something that they overarching have as a problem to address.
Yep, agreed. So a good first blood for Kyrmi, rather, onto Haddix. But now compounding that into something else, whether it's invades, farms, things like that. So the Valks can continue to expand on this lead. Already saw the one purple buff invade. But LASBRA also at level 5, Gore really hits his ability to get active across the map. That Ragnarok, such a difference maker. And Kyrmi's got Blink, no beads, and no CC immunity baked into that kit. Could be an easy target for LASBRA to jump in on if Kyrmi is a bit caught off guard.
That's just unfortunate, right? Like Jake, like he goes into the ult, channels it, spins, but they're all just outside of the range. Unfortunately, could have been, I mean, probably would have just been 2 beads burned, but 2 beads burned is something that then LASBRA could, like you said, come over, now level 5, able to capitalize on. Without those beads being burned, with that ult being on cooldown, means it's going to take a little while. Maybe you can force them with the Sanctified Fields, but that doesn't feel like a trade that you necessarily want to go out for. And so I think that that's something that maybe just slows things down for the Bolts, not necessarily changes the pace of the game. I'm really interested to see, like you said, how this Fenrir starts to impact things. I think the other day we saw a really good game 1 from the Bolts, from specifically LASBRA, on this pick. And I think it's another one that could find repeated success.
Jake and BaRRA working down the purple buff. Dharmic Pillar up from Gamma. And Wowy will be able to go back, pick up his own purple. So Jake has been putting pretty constant pressure on the purple, but has been unsuccessful in securing it under the pressure of Gamma and Wowy, again, outside of just the first one of the game. Kyrmi continues hanging out over on the right side of the map. Will drop his ultimate, forces the ultimate of LASBRA. And maybe for right now, it's a worthwhile trade. Keeps Laz back in the jungle and farming.
I wonder what LASBRA's other cooldowns were looking like, because he had beats, and it's, you know, going to last a lot longer than your ult cooldown is going to be. But is it worth dropping the beads there and maybe just doing a brutalize short leap away or an actual full leap away,
right,
just to disengage to save your ult? 160-second cooldown. I don't know. There's a lot of like weird math to balance that out. At the end of the day, it's just, well, now you don't have your ult. You're going to have to wait 60 seconds longer from where we're at now, maybe 70. And then you'll get it back, and you'll be able to start putting pressure onto people. With no beads burned on the other side, it's not like it was a very pressing issue yet for them either. And I'm interested to see, I think, every lane. You know, Haddix didn't get off to a great start, but seems to be holding their own pretty fine. Vin, I think we talked about this. You talked to the mid laners about it, but AMC has a lot of pressure, a lot of good shred potential. And he hits like a truck, so in the right hands, and I think Vin has the right hands, can find a lot of control in mid. And then left, it's just kind of I mean, this has been, admittedly, while it's gotten a lot better in Phase 2, it has been like one of the weaker portions of the Valkyries game is the dual lane. And I think that Jake and BaRRa right now are kind of showing that with how hard they're flexing.
Good rotation out from Kyrmi and BennyQ. Leap 1, Leap 2, and Sanctified Field, all of it being used to try to save Jake, but there's simply too much from the Valkyries. And again, a perfect timed rotation for the Valks. You send Benny over to the left side. Kyrmi is there as well. And the Dharmic Pillars to effectively confirm the kill there. Valhalla Valkyries jungler has gotten another.
And it is 4 ults for 1 kill.
Yeah, but
at the same time,
the
you
Bolts
get the
can't
kill,
do
right?
anything
Yeah,
with
the
it,
Bolts
right?
aren't. Yeah, the Bolts aren't able to capitalize on it. They lose a couple of their offerings. That's gonna really just equalize the obelisks. I think, like, again, one of those plays that works out well for the Valks as long as the Bolts don't have any way to capitalize on it over the next couple of minutes. And since, you know, Sanctified Fields are down, depending on whether or not Jake's ult gets consumed here soon, they might be able to do something in mid. But I think that was a good call from the Valks, and it's gonna go unpunished.
Yep. Good stinger out from Ven. Got some damage into Kyrmi, but ultimately nothing else on the end of it. LASBRA does have an opportunity here. Remember, Kyrmi does not have beat, so the full Ragnarok went through. Brutalized, canceled out by Aquarius. And Laz just doesn't have the damage yet. Just the Golden Blade. Got some damage into Kyrmi, but with the assistance of Aquarius there, there's never going to be a kill for LASBRA. Jake has drained this obelisk a good bit. A few offerings to go around and collect, but only so many.
There's 3 on the ground that he didn't even need.
He didn't even need them. So that's a nice play from Awesome Jake. A small support play that we are able to highlight as Trebuchet spawns over in mid for the Olympus Bolts. And Gore, the Olympus Bolts have a gold lead. They're losing all the kills. All right, fine. All right, now it's even. But over a second ago, they had a 500 gold lead. Point being, the game is even, despite the Valkyries finding the kill pressure.
Well, and that's the big deal, is when you find these early game kills, a lot of the questions afterward, and this has been, you know, for years in SMITE, what do you do with that pressure? What are you getting afterward? If you kill Vin here, what are you going to be able to grab outside of just the kill?
Nothing.
They don't even get Vin. But, you know, Gold Furies, you know, mid-Harpies even, big deal.
Now there's an ultimate from Kyrmi and a killing spree for the Nemesis. The Bolts have not had an answer for Kyrmi's mobility so far in the first few minutes of this game. 3-0 on the Nem. And this time, it's final judgment right onto his dome, and the immobile AMC doesn't have a chance to live through that.
And I was thinking, again, you know, small things after you get that kill. The reason we see some like kills like that, usually early game, you know, 3-0s like this, spiral out of control, is that you were in the perfect position. That red buff spawned right then. You could probably have just walked forward, maybe forced a fight into the Bolts, and so safer plays to back off. But, you know, Greater Scorpion over on right, mid camps on right, at least going the way of the Valkyries. But, you know, neutral farm and some of the Bolts farm. You got to be a little more willing, I think, to step forward and take it. Otherwise, I would say clean game right now from the Valkyries, right? And the fact that I'm being very nitpicky about it, honestly, is a good sign. Because it's like, okay, good. You're getting in there. You're getting your kills. I wish there was a little more for it, but I think that this is a good pace of game for them if they can just keep this up. That they have to figure out what they're going to do about the gold, because otherwise it's so far been just returning to the Bolts every time.
You know, I think it's the type of thing where we're in-game, in commentary, you can say, well, here's where the Valkyries could have done more, right? And like, well, I don't know how or why they haven't gone pyro, whatever that might be. But then after the fact, you know, we can look at it through the same lens that Wowy is, where regardless of how this game turns out, a team that's building on small things can now say, well, the Bolts, the second best team in the league, we're able to get a killing spree going for our jungler. But is this where the killing ends for the Valkyries, or will it start for the Bolts? Neither is the answer. Gamma engaged upon Kyrmi had to dash away. The Bolts find their first opportunity for aggression, but end up coming up empty-handed.
I also really like the draft for the Valkyries, because I think a lot of the issues they've run into, you know, again, certain moments where maybe it's a misstep, maybe you're playing aggressively with the rest of your team, some people have an out, you don't. Every single one of their gods right now has some way to disengage, and, you know, I think Gamma's is maybe the weakest of them all, but that's still a good get-out-of-jail-free card.
LASBRA had to leave because he was way too low, but now Aquarius is low as well. Haddix will also back away. And so the two teams exchange some burst damage here. And ultimately Aquarius the lowest health bar, but none of them reaching 0. Kyrmi just playing so well and has really been such an awesome player to have around the league. And you know, 3-0 start on the NEM is a good look for the Valks, but
and presence on the map. I
on
feel
the map
like
has been
Kyrmi's
strong.
just been like really aware so far this game and the last couple of sets. And so I'm really enjoying what this has been able to do. Plus now with the Erendite, like you're just gonna chase people down hard.
Jake is going to avoid most of the damage from the Dharmic Pillars, but how about that push from BennyQ? Dueling Dragons send Ven into the Dharmic Pillars, and then Kyrmi with the ultimate rotates through and does the last bit of damage. That said, gold just now goes back to even for the Valhalla Valkyries. That kill drops about 500 gold back to the Valks. For better or for worse, all of the kills are landing on Kyrmi. Now, we saw in our previous set what Scream can do when a Nemesis is just fed, right? I mean, it's never a bad thing to have a fed Nemesis, but as far as diversifying some of those kills, that's a different discussion. But for right now, a lot of the damage weighs with Kyrmi.
Yeah.
Though BennyQ, I think, able to change up his build a bit, Gore. You know, normally slower, more scaling style build, but realizing that Kyrmi's been over in mid a good bit, gets the Charon's coin going. Let's make use of these assists, and picks up 1 there in that fight.
And honestly, I think we're going to see a lot of BennyQ. Like, look, level 13 now. This is where Huang is going to really be able to start picking up the pace. Damage is going to be a lot more prevalent. Ability cooldowns feel really good. I think we're going to see good fights from the Valks if they keep this up.
Pyromancer dropped after the Bolts had picked it up, but the Valkyries showed enough presence. Despite Kyrmi being a bit further away from the action, Bolts not wanting to find out what happens when the NEM rotates into that fight. Ven will hit a decent power spike once his Soul Eater is transformed. And we've seen the AMC build kind of adapt over time, Gore.
Yeah.
Soul Eater now a staple in this build. Love to make use of some of that healing and some of that damage in this fight if the Valkyries do indeed pull the Pyromancer. Kyrmi's got damage for Jake, but it is not much. If Jake is able to slow down Kyrmi, who did pick up the beads, Bolts will be in a pretty good spot. But the fact that Kyrmi was able to escape until level 12 with 0 deaths without beads, I think very impressive and testament to his play so far.
Yeah, again, I think the Valkyries, despite little, like, maybe, like, small interactions I keep harping on, I think they're playing this really damn well. I mean, they're keeping the Bolts off the Pyro, so they're stopping the Bolts from getting a comfortable lead early on. They're leveraging their capabilities. Gamma's playing aggressively. And I like the fact that BennyQ, especially now, has hit that point where the power curve isn't going to be as easy for them. They just jump on the Huang and find the kill. Kyrmi might have all the kills, but it feels like the team as a whole has a lot of presence.
That said, if you're the Valkyries, you got to be worried about later on in the game when Haddix becomes near unkillable. Now remember, a big staple of the Raven build was the mask at some point. Yep. That's a starter item now, and so obviously Haddix won't be going for that build. But still strong nonetheless. Pyromancer pulled by the Bolts. This time the Valkyries will not be in range to contest the actual objective, but a fight now brewing after the fact as Kyrmi is blinked forward. Put a little damage into LASBRA, who will back away just fine. So a clean objective pull from the Olympus Bolts to grab themselves a few hundred gold.
The Bolts are playing Kings-esque right now. And the way that I feel like it works is they're not worried about these kills, right? I mean, 4 kills in favor of the Valks. Specifically onto Kyrmi, definitely is going to give an advantage there, but when your farm game's pretty much matched, you're really only missing out maybe a little bit of experience, it looks like, in mid as well as in support. That mid 3v3 is where you're lacking. But your gold numbers are fine. You're waiting for a team fight at this point, right? And at this rate, you're going to be looking at an AMC with Shred, LASBRA, who's going to be able to disrupt the backline, big team fight ultimates from Jake and BaRRA. It feels like there's a lot for the Bolts when it comes surging into 5-on-5s. And, you know, BennyQ with the ult can do a lot. Aquarius, I think, has a ton of heavy lifting that is going to be capable of in the late game because of Cthulhu. And we've seen the Gamma, I think, has been, in my mind, very prevalent over here. Despite the fact that Gamma was talking about the beach, like, he separated the beach at, like, the actual beach, the ocean, and the lake.
Yeah.
Which I'm never saying, do you want to go to the beach and take you to a lake? Despite that, he's still playing incredibly well.
Yeah.
That was something that really,
I was gonna
really
say,
upset
Gordon,
me, man.
So his play on field has been great.
Yeah, but he, for some reason, thinks of lakes when he hears the word beach.
Which is amazing that during a completely opinion-based segment, he still said something wrong. He says beach. I mean, he's not wrong.
And
right?
he's like, oh, well, mountain or beach? Well, it depends. Is it one of those beaches at the lake? And I'm like, that's not, like, if
I guess,
it's
you know,
it's not incorrect.
Right. I've just
but
never, that never comes to my mind.
If I'm talking about going to the lake, I'm going to say, let's go to the lake.
Right.
If I'm saying, let's go to the beach, and I take you to a lake, I think you should punch
Yeah, but
me.
if you say, let's go to the lake, I guess that was what you just said. If you say, let's go to the lake, you're assuming
I don't care if the lake has a beach or not. Like,
you're going to be on the water.
Yeah, we're at the lake.
Now, what would you say if you wanted to go to the beach at the lake? Let's go to the lake beach?
No, we're going to the lake.
So either
Same
way.
thing.
Got it. So the beach or the water at the lake
Yeah.
is still just the lake.
The
Got
beach
it.
is the beach where there's oceans.
You're right.
And sharks
Okay.
and stuff.
Anyway, that's the only misplay Gamma's had apparently this week because the rest of this
Well, that's
game
not
has looked
true.
great for the
They
Ganesh.
played another set earlier this week.
This moment for Gamma
Last
has
2
looked
days.
great. The last couple of days. 0-0-3 on the Ganesh. And, you know, we've seen the Chronos Pennant build on the Ganesh.
Yeah.
And I'm always shouting to the heavens about how I want you to spam Dharmic Pillars. Look, Pridwin crosses the same type of threshold. I'm still about it. And so Gamma making use of the Dharmic Pillars. A little additional CDRs looked
Yeah.
good here in game one.
I mean, it's such a low cooldown ability. For what it can do for you, admittedly, you know, they have to cross through the threshold, but, like, what it can provide and the low cooldown you can get on Dharmic Pillars is just absolutely incredible here. So I love that Gamma's willing to throw him out there, holding onto him for now, but if the Bolts try to get aggressive here, or if the Valks decide they want the fight, that's going to be a very easy lockdown. I mean, you can pull someone like Haddix, force their ult, grab Vin. I mean, he's going to be very easy because at that point you have to just Aegis and walk through it, and you're still going to get hit by some of the debuffs there. So you have to be very careful around Gamma. And I think the Bolts know that.
Yeah, they do. Both able to put a lot of pressure on this tier 1 tower in mid. Both teams still have all of their towers remaining. Honestly, outside of Pyromancer, like a tier 1 going down is going to be the biggest infusion of gold that we've gotten. And there's nearly one that's about to go down on right. Nearly one for the Bolts that'll go down in mid here eventually. That's a disengage from Jake. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel sends 2 back. Kyrmi certainly has the damage to fight Ven, but maybe not beneath the tier 1 tower. And both Ven and Kyrmi will throw out the ultimates. Ven goes back, picks up the Stinger. With that, maybe a more worthwhile trade for the AMC.
Yeah, being able to get your ult back incredibly quickly. Kyrmi not having theirs for a while means that burning through someone like Jake, like Haddix, I think this Nim is going to be great against Haddix, but now Haddix is a little bit of leverage to work with in the event of a big fight. And Pyromancer's coming back up soon. So I expect the Bolts to be grouping up on right sometime in the relative, next minute, 2 minutes, once that Pyro is back up. And then it's just the question of how much they can leverage that small advantage.
That'll be the first kill of the game for the Bolts. BennyQ's health bar disappeared. Then bursty damage at this point in the game, and could Gamma fall prey as well? He'll be chased down, and the last bit of damage is from Venenu. A double kill from the AMC. Gamma obviously a bit frustrated with how that played out.
Yeah.
His player cam. BennyQ falls to 0-1-3, so does Gamma. That'll be a Gold Fury pull for the Bolts. I think the Valks maybe thought they would get a free Pyro, but it's anything but.
And that might just be perfect case scenario for the Bolts right there, right? You find a kill onto the mid laner, so you already have pressure. And even with just a 4v5, probably still starting to slight maybe more towards Pyro than Gold, because it's going to be easier. Get a second kill on the support? Yeah, okay, we're going to go for the Gold Fury and still get the Pyromancer, because there's not much that the Valkyries can do in a 3v5. Yeah, the respawns are coming through, so, you know, Fire Giant would be maybe a little overzealous to try and pull. But you get a massive gold infusion from the kills, massive gold infusion from the Harpy itself.
God.
You steal a little bit away in terms of the Scorpion there, plus the Pyromancer. And what went was dead even for 20 minutes straight. The Bolts just skyrocket in terms of economy.
That's nuts. 4,500 gold over the course of 2 kills. I mean, 2 kills at a critical point in the game make all the difference in the world. Tier 1 goes down in mid and left on the Valkyrie side of the map, and then, Gore, you mentioned all the neutral objectives that the Bolts are able to get. So that adds up. And again, I think Gamma knew the frustration of a moment like that where the Valks had played such clean Smite up to this point. Still very far from being out of this game, but imagine it's frustrating when you've played such a clean game and probably a good enough player to realize that a couple of deaths there ultimately make a massive difference as far as golden experience across the map because of what the Bolts were able to build up. So I think you still got to go back and you got to start leaning on Kyrmi here. He's 4-0, but he's fallen a level behind LASBRA, and that's what I was wondering earlier on. All of your kills, all of your lead has been on Kyrmi up to this point. Can the Nemesis get it done?
Get it done and you know, like, survive the next couple of fights. I think Kyrmi, again, has played incredibly well so far this game.
Yeah.
And realistically, it's just the choice of target, where that divine judgment's going to go, like where you're going to be balancing the scales in terms of trying to shred people's health, their prots, things like that. It feels like Haddix, to me, kind of screams target because it's so difficult to kill this Ravana.
Isn't that what Nem does, balances scales? Is that her thing?
That's like her whole...
Was that on purpose?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it just worked out that
No,
way.
I was thinking about Nemesis's kit. Which maybe makes it less impressive, honestly, now that I've said it out loud. It removes the magic.
Well, no, I'm just making sure that people like me, who like it took a second to get there, I want to make sure it was fully appreciated.
Yeah,
Is what I'm trying to say.
I appreciate that. But we'll see whether or not they can tip the scales in their favor.
Yeah,
That one was also on purpose.
I wasn't going to bring that one up, though. Valhalla Valkyries might have to answer this Fire Giant pull by the
Look at
Olympus
Haddix.
Bolts. Fire Giant sure is looking at him. He's still on it. Haddix doesn't want to give it up yet. Basically taking his health shield in a little bit worth of damage. Haddix has arrived at almost full build. He's one tier into his 6th slotted item, has upgraded his starter item, Runic Shield, Glad Shield, Sovereignty, and a Spirit Robe as well. And Spirit Robe has really skyrocketed in priority over the last few weeks. Mitigations, so important. And the health shield not getting much stronger as Haddix tanks up the Fire Giant. Ven will send some damage its way. Over in mid is LASBRA, so you got to watch out for the Fenrir gank around the back of this fight. Big damage out of Venenu, and a lot of it's connected onto Gamma. Darting pillars, they mean nothing to the Olympus Bolts. And now the Sanctified Field will slow down Kyrmi, who ends up having to leave the engagement. Aquarius being burnt through as well. Olympus Bolts are low, but the Valkyries just don't have the damage to finish off any of the low health targets, and it'll be a 3-for-none to the Bolts.
And look, that's going to be a Fire Giant. They're low, like you said, with how much damage Haddix was not worried about, plus the healing that he is getting right now. Yeah, that's going to be an easy tank. BaRRa and Ven are still high enough that they're going to be able to pick up this FG. No problem. And that one, I mean, that one comes down to the commitment from the Bolts, right? Jumping deep, making sure that they grab Gamma, not a fast response from the Valkyries. And relics still get burned, right? You have Aegis beads getting burned on the other side, so you're able to get damage out there. But finalizing those kills after losing Gamma and then Kyrmi was incredibly difficult. Once Aquarius was gone, I think it was very much an easy collapse for the Bolts to continue that tear. And that's a lot of where the problem has been, is just dealing with this full 5-on-5. And I was wondering what kind of power spikes we might see from the Valkyries, but the other side, you've just got so much to disrupt team fights. LASBRA being able to jump in and just choose someone to die, alongside BaRRa with the Sanctified Fields, just being able to make a no-play zone for your team. That was going to be hard for the Valkyries no matter what they did.
Agreed. I mean, look, always going to be tough for Kyrmi, right? I mean, you're 4-0 on Nem, but if you're diving BaRRa, you just drop the Sanctified Field, back pedals away, he can knock you back, sustain himself up a little bit. Always going to be difficult for Kyrmi. Might need to save the ultimate for Haddix, burn down that health bar a bit. Jake, so tanky at this point in the game. Now he's got Bulwark of Hope for that additional shielding when he gets low. The front line was hard enough to deal with, and the back line of the Bolts is scaling up so effectively at this point. It'll be tough. How big the gold lead has suddenly grown. Gore, 5 minutes ago we were even. At 20 minutes, we were even. And now we are at an 11,000 gold lead for the Olympus Bolts. And again, I think the Valks have to feel some frustration here, because you started this game off so cleanly, and the Bolts off of 2 picks able to skyrocket themselves forward.
Yeah, it's 2 to get themselves an immediate gold lead,
Right.
and then 3 to get themselves a double that, right? I mean, they jumped up about 5K the first time. And it's gotten even further because, look, that's the last tier 2. That means another 1,500 gold in the pocket for the team. And when you look at it individually, like 1,500 gold for just the individual tower, not a lot when you spread it across all 5 people, 300 each. But then when you add in the fact that they got the other tier 2s and the tier 1s, and also all of the others, yeah, the amount that it adds up to is just massive for them here. I think that breaking the base is going to be a little more hard for the Bolts, but look at the split, a 3-2 split, which we don't get to see too often. And I like that they're pulling it away.
BaRRaCCuDDa's low, losing the poke battle to Wowy on left, and in the meantime, the Bolts 3 in mid. Pick up the Phoenix. Stinger is on to Gamma, but Gamma will not die. And it looks like the Ganesha stays alive in the mid lane, backs away, gets to the fountain. But Bolts were looking for the Phoenix, unconcerned about the kills, and Phoenix they got. How about that peel from Awesome Jake? As Kyrmi was looking for the mid laner. The immobile AMC just needed some help from his support. This could be the final fight of the game for the Olympus Bolts. Aquarius unable to operate. Ragnarok from LASBRA found Kyrmi, but just shy of the damage threshold needed. But in goes the Fenrir, and down goes the elephant.
And I just love, I mean, the damage numbers from BaRRa throughout that fight. The Sanctified Fields felt very far back, but the numbers, the output that came from that Olorun was just insane for what he was able to do. And you know, looking down at the build, it's not like he's done anything crazy. Gone for the Bancrofts, got the Glyph upgrade, 2 rings. That BaRRaCCuDDa, though, really helping put in work. Just shredded the Cthulhu.
Kyrmi and Haddix will battle over on left while the rest of the Olympus Bolts pour their damage into the Titan. The Valkyries had a great start to game number 1 here. Got Kyrmi off to a 4-0 start, fell to 4-1, only the 1 death for the Valhalla Valkyries jungler. And the Olympus Bolts able to make a lot out of a little here in this game, and they'll take game 1.
It's just those opportune moments, and it's very much what I was talking about earlier with the Valks, where it was just, okay, cool. You know, Kyrmi, you've got 2 kills now. What have you done with that? Where you get the 3rd kill, you get the 4th kill. Where is this pressure going? What is it buying you? Where is it affording you anything back in your favor other than just, hey, we got a kill? And then you look at the Bolts doing the same thing. Hey, we got 2 kills, cool. Off those 2 kills, we got a Gold Fury into a Pyromancer. And off the next 3, we got a Fire Giant, all your towers, and 2 Phoenixes, and the game. Like, the presence I think that the Bolts were able to bring and the things that they were able to find with that pressure once they started looking for it was incredible. And I think that a lot of it was just playing that slower pace, right? They didn't let the Valkyries come in and get a bunch of kills, 4 kills. They kept it very minimal. The picks didn't really amount to much at the times that they happened. And so the Bolts were able to just kind of slide into the late game.
That's very important. It's the time of game, right? 4 kills in the early game builds you up a few hundred gold. 5 kills for the Bolts in the mid to late game built them up 10,000 gold, right? I mean, it's the timing, knowing when to strike, and compounding your gold lead, small or big, into something bigger. Bolts able to do so in game 1. Valhalla Valkyries, some things to adjust before game 2 coming up next.
I wanna tell you something.
number 1 of our third set of the day goes to the Olympus Bolts. Back and forth, at least at the start of the game, and the Olympus Bolts able to come up ahead. And talking about the Olympus Bolts and the Valkyries and us on the desk and production back there, and even the players all at home are all playing on our Alienware gear, the Aurora Ryzen 10 desktops for all of them. These really nice laptops, which I honestly have forgotten which code number that go for those ones. But you can check out all that over on SmiteGame.com/Alienware. Use code AWSmite09 to see what kind of discounts and codes that Alienware has to offer to you. And you can even go to AlienwareArena.com to see what else they have. I know that they always run tons of giveaways for either games or skins in games, all kinds of great stuff. So make sure that you are checking out Alienware also on their social media at Alienware on both Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much to Alienware for coming back with us in Season 9 of the Smite Pro Leagues. J-Mac, I got Trelly joining me on the desk, helping me break down that game, but I think the casters do a great job of kind of breaking this one out, and even something you mentioned up on the desk coming into this one, which is Valkyries find themselves usually getting at least an early few kills. This time, 4 of them off the back of Kyrmi. But every time I look back up after those 4 kills, the gold was never more than like 100 or 2 at best ahead for the Valkyries.
Yeah, it's just, we knew this going in. This is how the Valks like to play. They get some early aggression off the back of Kyrmi, and what they translate it into, more often than not, it's usually just more kills later on. You'll see that the gold is never out of reach for the Olympus Bolts, and they're always in control because of that fact. So I love to see this from the Valks, that early aggression, but they have to be able to translate that into objectives, which the Bolts just did so well off the back of their double ADC. Of course, Haddix was eventually able to get online with this Robin with a different style of mitigations build. He went the Death's Embrace, went for a little bit more sustained, but still got the job done. You get to the back line, you're annoying to kill. That's sort of par for the course for what the Robin brings. And of course, LASBRA, he was never going to have an issue on the Fenrir. He was just able to get to the back line so effectively. And it just took a little bit. That's all, right? Just okay, we're going to let the aggression come through in the early, and then we're confident in our team fight as the game goes on.
And that's the thing, is they got those 4 kills early on Kyrmi, and then nothing more beyond there. Kyrmi goes down 1 time during the game, and when we looked up at the scoreboard at one of those first highlights, the score was 2-4. And again, 4 kills very early on by Kyrmi within like the first 7 or so, 8 minutes of the game he has those. And we look up, it's 2-4 for the Bolts, and they're up like 4,000 or 5,000 gold at that point. I mean, we just have not seen the Valks be able to really translate this lead that they've been getting earlier on. And I think that shows your sentiments. It shows all of us from the casting team, from really what we've been seeing across the board, is just the Valkyries have got to find something else to do on the map once they get this lead. Punish one player if you have to, whether that be to bully Haddix out, which they did a great job early on. One of the answers to dealing with these solo lane, high tanky mitigation style Robins is to bully him early so he doesn't get to that point. Mm-hmm. And I thought with that first blood on Haddix, that was going to be the name of the game for the Valks, but then he just kind of petered away. So now if you are the Valks, game number 2, before we jump into picks and bans, what other kinds of adjustments, maybe even just outside of what Kyrmi's done, maybe just across the board, need to be changed up?
I don't think they have to change up the picks or bans at all, really. I mean, Wowy came into this interview and he told us exactly what the game plan was, and it was just, we're not going to worry about anyone else. We want to focus on improving our own gameplay, our own team fight, our own farming, and that's the thing. I think that's been the conversation pretty much every time the Valks have come into studio this phase, is they're trying to just be a sponge for information and take in the playstyle that they need to. So I don't think there's any one adjustment they need to make in the picks and bans. In fact, throw the picks and bans away. Just do what you did last game. Get that early aggression. And then, make it to a Pyromancer. Get some force on that side of the map. Change it into a Gulfir, whatever that needs to be. I know it's not as easy as it sounds, but that's got to be on their brain.
Yeah, I mean, the first 15 minutes of Smite are the most played portion of the game, obviously, because everybody needs to be able to get to that point in order to find an ending. And that's where the Valkyries have found success, has been in that first 10 to 15 minutes of the game. Now it's just a matter of translating the next 10 to 15 minutes of the game after the 20, 25, 30 minutes to see if they can find a win. They're going to need some help in game number 2. Picks and bans already underway. Dodgy and Nox banned away by the Valkyries. Olympus Bolts will take Chernobog and Erlong Shen off the table. So a little bit of a stretch across the board, making sure to take away one of the top hunters, but also making sure to still throw a couple of shots over at Kyrmi, who has been the biggest impact player for the Valkyries as of late.
Yeah, I was wondering if the Bolts were going to ban the Xing Chen there because they were able to first pick it last time over the Yemoja notably, and Awesome Jake likes that pick a lot. Not going to let that one go through for the Valks, so now the Valks have their pick of the litter. What are they trying to go for? Notably, I mean, Ruler was looked over last time. That is still available, but they really do put some stock on the Kyrmi Nemesis. He got 100% of their kills. He was 4-0 last game. Makes sense to me, right? I mean, there was no reason not to grab the Nemesis there. There are some better things that are available if you want to like get your mid laner ahead, for example. You know, you can play through the duo lane, but just making sure that Kyrmi's on something comfortable seems to be the game plan thus far, and I would agree.
Making sure to put your power player on a power pick seems to be the name of the game for the Valkyries. I was wondering, I asked it to you at least over in the green room, if everybody got a bead necklace like Gamma and Wowy had. It doesn't seem so. Kyrmi doesn't have one. I don't think I see one on Aquarius that's any different than his normal necklace that he wears there. So, seems only the duo lane's getting the love as far as the... Oh, he does have one. So Kyrmi's just not wearing it then? Wait, does BennyQ have one?
Well,
Can we get a camera pan to BennyQ? He's not. Or maybe he's got it under the hoodie. I can't fully tell.
Maybe that's where everyone's got it. It's under the shirts. The beads are with them in spirit. And take a look at... I've got some bad news. I've got some bad news for Valks fans. Because I recently learned this statistic about how good Haddix's Horus solo is.
How good is it?
I believe 84%, something like that. It's too good is the problem.
That's
so
really good.
Doesn't mean that it hasn't lost, but it's more often than not when Haddix locks this Horus solo, the Bolts are winning. So, you know, we could always put that Awesome Jake, of course. That could be a Horus support. But, you know, given how much it's been played, and, you know, luckily Gormizer has those stats for us, and he was able to, you know, see what teams win against different picks and what teams lose against certain picks. So, yeah, it's kind of spooky.
Yeah, I just looked it up. 8 games played by Haddix so far, 87.5 win rate.
He was I lowballed it.
You lowballed it, and you were still, even still, it's just a shocking number to bring out there. But Eset, who's notably been a trouble whenever playing up against the Bolts. I believe it was like 6 games that they've played against it and haven't won a single one. Now they'll draft for themselves. If you can't beat them, join them in this instance. But
we
does leave open Bellona and Yemoja, so we won't go 2 games without seeing the Water Goddess over in the support role. This time it's going over to the hands of the Valkyries.
Yeah, so the Yemoja will be picked up, as well as the Bellona. Notably, that was banned away from Aqua. So the Valks are getting... You know, on paper, exactly what you would think they would want. Of course, BennyQ is going to have to wait for his pick later on, but, you know, he'll go to the Merlin in times. There's plenty of picks on the table that I'm sure he can whip out. I mean, they're not banning Terra. You know, that's a BennyQ pick as well. So, you know, there are plenty of things that are available. I don't think he's going to be completely banned out here. And it looks like Jake is going to grab the Ganesha for himself. So now the front line for the Bolts have sort of petered out here, unless... You know, one of these tanky-style jungles are still to be picked, but given the fact that Osiris and Erlang are already banned, you know, unless we see, yeah, I imagine that it will still be something that LASBRA is able to find here as we go into that second wave. Chiron's going to be taken away, as well as the Fenrir, so we will have to get a different look from LASBRA. I was going to say he still has that Fenrir. Not anymore. The Valks are not going to give him that second chance.
No, will not. Chiron Cupid banned away. Fenrir on the opposite side for the Valhalla Valkyries. I gotta say, this database that we have put together that has been made available to us got so much information. I look through some of the player names sometimes. It just gives me a wave of nostalgia as far as anything. I just looked down and I saw a player named Na, who used to play a long time ago. But that's way beyond the point. As Ravana is the final ban for the Valhalla Valkyries.
These aren't getting locked.
The Olympus Bolts, they hovered Thor. They hovered Thanatos.
These aren't getting locked. Stop messing around.
What do you mean? It could be locked in. You never know. The Olympus Bolts could be having a bit of fun.
I mean... Yeah, I suppose, but
having a little bit of fun, you know, just throwing something out there. Try, you know, dip your toes in the water and see how hot or cold it may be.
Well, Twig played the Thor and tweeted after, like, maybe I should have left Thor in the trash. So I'm pretty sure that's what he said.
Was that the tweet that he put out after that one?
Yeah, it was something similar.
Oh man!
And then Sam for Soccer said, "Nah, man, he's totally good." Like, so I guess all of the jungles want to play Thor. But they just aren't quite able to make him work just yet. And it looks like that will be the Thor bait and the Thanatos bait into just Xbalanque. So we still don't know. It could be either of those picks as we beat her out. They're still available. It's not like they haven't been taken away. But we will get to see the ADC pick. Some great team fight presence. Turning off the lights is always annoying. Muffle up your comms a little bit, guys. I can't see. Back up. That sort of thing. So I think there's never really a bad time to pick the Xbalanque in a meta like this. And now it's time for the Valks. I am curious to see what BennyQ goes to. You know, more often than not, the Huang or the Merlin got to be on the brain, but the Huang did a ton of damage. It just wasn't able to get any kills last game.
Yeah, a little bit hard to kind of close those ones out. Back over to the Valkyries, as you say, Huang available. If BennyQ wants to go, that's been, I think, his most common pick so far this phase. It's also been one of the most picked gods this phase, but hasn't had the most significant performance yet. I think the last time we saw it, it was sitting somewhere around like 38% win rate in his debut for the SPL, at least in this phase. So hasn't been finding a whole lot of wins for too many teams, but has been good, at least for a couple of them. Not only that, though, do need the Hunter for the Valhalla Valkyries. Wowy holding on to his final pick with the Cupid taken away, which has been a signature that he's gone back to. Few options still available. How do you feel about Charybdis in a meta like this? Because that used to be a Wowy special. You'd go to this god kind of as a default more often than not.
Yeah, Charybdis is incredibly safe, but I just don't think the team fight presence is exactly what they're looking for. You know, the Artemis sort of has fallen out of favor, but I wouldn't mind something like that. And I just spoke it into existence because I think they need a team fight, and I think that's exactly what the Artemis brings. Not the best win rate, not the best pick rate, but it's just something that Wowy likes to play and like to play more often when it was, you know, a little bit better in the meta. And I think you can still get the value out of this pick.
Yeah, one of those, we play our game to the best that we can, something that Wowy himself was alluding to in that pregame interview. Artemis is a comfort pick for Wowy, same thing with the Huang over for Benny, even Aquarius on this Bellona. So pretty much comfort across the board for the Valkyries. And if you can find something comfortable for yourself, that puts you that much closer to stepping up to the Olympus Bolts. One final pick.
Thanatos.
We saw Thor.
Thanatos.
We saw Thanatos hovered. And looking across the board for the junglers,
there's not a lot of options.
Osiris, Erlong, Shet. Gilgamesh is back up, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's available.
What?
Wow.
I'd prefer Thor.
Wow, you're going that far as to say you'd rather have a Thor than a Naja.
Yes, 100%. But, you know, I'm not saying it's going to be useless. They have some burst to follow it up. You know, with circle, if you're landing in a fully charged circle protection, not many gods are able to live through that. The issue is, what if they just beads, you know? Just use beads forehead.
What if they simply beads?
I offer you 1 wind fire wheels, you offer me bead. It's not a good trade deal, trust me. But, you know, this is one of those picks that has been able to find some success. If you're able to, you know, make sure to use that ultimate on a key target, you can take someone out of the fight and focus out with that. So the Valks have to hold on to their beads, and if they do, the Naja pick is going to be hard to make work, but this is LASBRA in his prime. He's playing some darn good Smite. You know, he's been having some high kill games. I feel as if he could definitely make it work.
And Magi's got some buffs too by getting a couple of new glyphs out there named the Revenge and then the Protector. Is that the I can't remember
the Shelter?
The Shelter. Protector, Shelter, pretty much the same thing.
Yeah,
a shelter protects you. You're getting protection from the Shelter. Both of those, if I'm not mistaken, also slightly lower cooldown than a normal Magi's as well, so it makes it maybe a little bit more difficult for this Naja to get in. So now for the Valhalla Valkyries, looking at this, you know, hold on to your beads, use it when the ult forehead comes through there, maybe some of the Magi's. Do you think that this Naja pick might be something that could at least lend the Valkyries at least some early pressure in this game to kind of get the ball rolling?
I mean, yeah, I don't have too much data on how the Naja pick works because we see it whipped out every once in a while, and more often than not, it doesn't do that well. So, you know, you can still do some crazy damage even without the ult. If the ult's not connecting, you got some decent crit chance. If you build into that crit, your sash can start swinging as well. So it's not like the pick is completely useless. It's just very difficult to get the max value out of this character. So, you know, Kyrmi should still be able to get as active as he was last game. That's not going to change. I think the Nemesis is still going to have a good time in the early. It's just what are the Valks going to do once they get ahead, if they do, you know, with that lead? How are they going to make it climb? You have to get the snowball rolling somehow. Someone's got to push it down the mountain, and so far they've had no one to do that yet.
Well, here's maybe the unfortunate part for some Naja stats.
Oh boy, here we go.
We've only seen him twice, at least to what I can see, in this season so far for the SPL.
Right.
2 games played.
Both losses.
Both losses.
Yep.
Was Scream.
Was it both Scream?
They were both Scream.
Yep.
So far the Naja has not been able to perform, at least in the hands of the Solar Scarabs. We'll see if LASBRA can make it work over for the Olympus Bolts. They're trying to secure themselves a 2-0 win over the Valhalla Valkyries, the number 2 seed in the Olympus Bolts against the number 8 Valkyries. This one's maybe expected for the Bolts to find a win, but it might be a little bit difficult. We'll see if they can make it work in game number 2.
Olympus Bolts throwing us a bit of a curveball here as we go in to game number 2. Up against the Valhalla Valkyries, and the Bolts are throwing the Valkyries a bit of a curveball. Invader's curse be damned. When I've got 5 players doing it, we'll still beat you in a fight, but unfortunately for us,
I don't think it's possible to get the record for first blood anymore.
What do you mean?
Well, the timer, because the timers at the beginning of the game have changed a lot.
Yeah.
And so the record was set in Season 3 at negative 53 seconds. It's so hard to do something like that now.
Negative 53 seconds?
The time they got over to this side of the jungle, they were at negative 30. And it's long story short, it's hard if not impossible.
I think bordering on impossible. BaRRaCCuDDa and Jake opting for the same purple buff invade start to use the frenzy, take the buff. Gamma hoping to steal it away. And oh my goodness, that lasts a little bit. I thought it was going to drop off the moment Jake got back into lane, but no, took a second. So purple buff, and it looks like BaRRa's going to be given full XP of the purple camp over here. So if I remember correctly, game 1 Jake and BaRRa split both, but still took to wave 2 for them to hit level 2. I wonder if that'll change here now that Wowy isn't. But then you don't get the experience from the green buff. I guess we'll see here. So Wowy and Gamma still both level 1 at the end of this wave. These next 3 minions are the end of wave 1, but now it's all muddled up.
Homogenized.
Yeah, who knows? Anyway, Jake and BaRRa have found an interesting strategy that maybe gives them a slight advantage in golden experience.
They both hit 2 at the same time.
At the same time. Okay, so not a massive change. Maybe it'll make a difference between the supports.
Jake hit 2.
Jake did hit 2, Gamma did not. So maybe that's where the big difference is here. Jake got experience from, and because remember, Gamma was not over at the green buff. Gamma tried to steal away the purple buff.
Yeah.
So Gamma didn't get any camp XP to start this lane. So regardless of the start, Gamma's going to fall just a bit behind. More than anything, though, it'll just give the Bolts a little bit of breathing room over on right, or on left, rather.
On Haddix, this is what I love. So there's been a conversation. I know Ro heavily agrees with this. Last time, what was it, for Masters? There was a heavy conversation around this on Twitter. I think he mentioned it the other day. No one else is really playing the Horus in solo, or the Horus in general. But look at that pressure. I mean, onto a Bellona, good clear, good damage, and keeping Aquarius kind of locked up here. And maybe this is a little bit more exaggerated, just because, you know, we know that Haddix is kind of nuts at playing anything, but being able to strip those prots and then get more aggressive, keep a Bellona locked under the tower. It's opened up this for LASBRA in terms of a steal, and they could easily rotate in for Kyrmi.
Kyrmi blinks forward on the Nemesis. LASBRA, of course, playing Naja, which we haven't talked about yet because we were deciphering the purple buff strategy from the Olympus Bolts. So Naja from LASBRA. Now, Trelly was not told Gore. Trelly is a firm believer that beads is the bane of Naja's existence. Not untrue, but if you're getting beads for ult, you might take that.
Normally, we've seen it, and you know, when I think of the Naja lately, I think of Twig, and I think specifically like the combo they were doing. And this might be more last year than it is even Season 9, but you know, they'd lock in a Kukulkan, they'd lock in a Ra, they'd lock in a Naja, and they'd say, cool, I'm going to ult him, and as long as he doesn't beats, when I come down, you just hit him with big ability, easy peasy, we win. There's not, like, I mean, I guess Circle of Protection counts, but like, not to the same extent of combinations that you typically expect from a Naja, but Sash is still really good in terms of CC, and I think that's what it is, you know, maybe not a lot of ult combos, but Spirit Ball, Sash, Haddix has a stun, Jake has a root, you know, BaRRa can at least chase you down. Like, you know, I was thinking of old days when Xbalanque did technically have a stun, but not consistent and also really wonky. On top of all of that, I think that they are looking for beads, not necessarily as the, hey, I'm going to pull this and then combo you, but more as the consistency of their fight is going to be able to find a lot of CC in the middle of it.
BaRRaCCuDDa accidentally steps on a trap, or Wowy just placed it very well after Gamma hit a stun. I do want to say before we move on.
Yeah.
Talking about Kukulkan. Now, I won't get a chance to because Ven has got the circle of protection at his feet, but the burst heal makes all the difference. And now the Windfire Wheels won't execute Kyrmi. Maybe sets up Ven for first blood. Spirit Ball won't hit either. And circle of protection worth its weight in gold. And Ven will survive. Nearly got a chance at a first blood.
And Kyrmi's going to be the only person you can I guess Aquarius as well, consistently take up into the air if you're LASBRA. So I won't be surprised if like a little right-hand heavy focus from the jungler, depending on where the beads end up going on the other side. But I'm really curious, because you were mentioning Kukulkan, and now I want to know.
Yes. Well, we're not going to get a chance again because Awesome Jake has used the Dharmic Pillars.
Summons fights.
Frenzy used, and Dharmic Pillars just last too long for Gamma. That'll be first blood over to the Olympus Bolts. And BaRRaCCuDDa and Awesome Jake find their time to strike.
That's the Ganesha ultimatum. Leave Dharmic Pillars and open yourself up to being chased down and killed off afterward, plus the damage that you're going to take from the ult, or don't leave Dharmic Pillars and take a bunch of damage because you're locked in a certain position, right? And so it's like, okay, if you're Gamma there, you walk out, you die, you stay, you die. You go for the one that's going to be maybe least likely for you to die, and either way, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of ways out of there. So just well played, and I think well placed by the Bolts in order to make sure that kicks off.
Absolutely. And able to steal the purple buff. And the, what do you call it, the snake lady on, I said it was canon, and I've forgotten what the official term is for it. You said that earlier on this weekend, which is what I was looking for. But into the mid lane goes Kyrmi. And this time, Circle of Protection will not save Venenu's life. Valhalla Valkyries needed to get something going here. Able to find an opening kill. Blink use, Stone Cutting Sword online first. Kyrmi now pulls. Nice lead over Laz.
I love that, though. Not only the kill in mid, but then immediately some pressure on left to be able to pick up the purple buff. Yeah, LASBRA and Haddix are a little late to try and come
pretty
in.
Far.
I think, yeah, BennyQ's going to be pretty safe in this matchup from the jungle. I like where the Valks are going.
Gamma uses the River's Rebuke. And LASBRA is low. The Naja will have to use ultimate to dash away. So LASBRA remains on the map. This is what you need. Look, if you feel like the Bolts have been able to make some proactive plays, the Valkyries have got to start trying to match that. And that's exactly what we've seen over the last couple of minutes. Haven't picked up more than just that one return kill. But at least still calling some shots on the map, forcing the Bolts to respond is a great start here for the Valks in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm loving this pressure already. Again, it's little, it's minimal. With the first Blood Bounty going towards the Bolts, it's made sure that things stay equal. But I think it's exactly the kind of shifts I needed to see from Game 1 to Game 2. And, you know, when you're looking at it and you're listening to Wowy, you're listening to our conversations about the Valks over the last couple of weeks, this is exactly what you need out of them. Because, you know, you come into this, and if you came into today looking at the last couple of sets, you probably expected a few 2-0s. Admittedly very surprised. I think the Scarabs played wonderfully, and I love that one was an upset. Yep. But when you look at this one, you're probably, you know, coming into it wondering what the Valks are going to offer.
That's a lot of damage from Jake and LASBRA. Ring toss does a lot, and Laz doesn't even need his ultimate. Where's Horus going to go? In behind Gamma. Kind of a roundabout way, might actually get away from this fight. No knockup onto the Yemoja, but no health or Omi. And maybe Jake will be the one to hand the kill over, but Haddix gets the double. And again, that's the type of moment. It's early enough on in the game that the Valks aren't going to suddenly lose a Tower, a Gold Fury, a Greater Scorpion, and a Pyro over it. But does give a bit of the credence on the map back to the Bolts.
Yeah, being able to solidify, like, I mean, BaRRa's now on his own purple buff. They're getting aggressive onto the red buff.
My goodness.
Well, they might not get it. They could get Benny.
Benny had to use the beads and the float away. Jake is absolutely relentless right now. He is not stopped holding down one of his movement keys and is going to continue to do so. He's draining the obelisk, attempting to do just that, but he'll have to get away from Wowy and Gamma. But this Ganesha, 100% kill participation all across the map on a Ganesha this early in the game. What a strong statement from Awesome Jake. Gets Chronos Pendant. Won't talk about the Chronos Pendant Ganesha much more because we've seen exactly what Jake wants to do with it. It's initiate, drop Dharmic Pillars, rotate, initiate, drop Dharmic Pillars, and it's paid off.
That's going to be my favorite thing to watch, though. Watch Jake's, anytime he drops the Dharmic Pillars, watch the diamond next to his name on the right. Just anybody at home, like, just to keep track of it. Because it's going to be up a lot, and watching it refill as quickly as it does, I mean, it is just... It's a pleasure. It's a treat. Maybe it's just because I'm a support player that I really like
for
that.
The Bolts, it's a treat.
Yeah, for the Bolts, for the Valks, it's a nightmare.
Well, and it does decent damage when you get Chronos Pendant. You know, it actually chunks out a little bit.
You've got damage, you know, like you said, the Chronos Pendant applying to the scaling, prot shreds, slows, like, for a while there. And I think I still stand by this. Just, it's one of the best ultimates in the game. I think just blanket statement, like, it's just so good for what it can do. It's just using it and utilizing it properly. I think having it up every, like, 50 seconds makes it worthwhile.
All right, Diamond counter. We started at 9:30. We'll see if Gamma can, one, live through this fight. She will be able to do. But BennyQ in mid, maybe not. Beads were down for BennyQ, unable to float out and away. Not enough damage yet from LASBRA to really threaten the life of Benny. So, interesting. Actually, both mid laners opting for a similar style of build. Unless I missed it, I think they both started with a couple tiers of items, went back, got Bumbas, and are now building into their third item, Divine Ruin for BennyQ Likely Warlock staff for Ben. But a couple punches thrown over towards mid-gore. None of them connecting just yet, other than putting pressure on the Valks.
We're coming in on it. I was hoping you had a little more wind in you, because it's 52, 53, 55 seconds for his ultimate right now. Maybe it was at the 54.
Just in time for a Pyromancer, right? I mean, you can try to counter out Gamma's ultimate, and you will. And look at what it's doing. Big silence from Jake. But good news for the Valkyries is you just straight up had numbers there. You had too many people, and the Bolts unable to answer your dive. 4 versus 2, and now the Valkyries pulling out the Pyromancer. Also some steal potential with the Ganesh, but it's here for Ven as well. Gamma walks too far forward. Valkyries at least get the Pyro. And an ultimate from BennyQ attempting to disengage.
Yeah, do they get away is a completely different conversation. BaRRa's here to continue the chase. That stun not going to connect.
Oh,
Look
man.
at the damage.
Spirit Ball for the damage, didn't even need the stun, and then Circle Protection down. Aquarius under some threat, but different members of the Bolts all tanking up the tier 1 tower in mid. Ends up being a couple of kills for the Bolts and a Pyromancer to the Valkyries, but that brings us back to even. And again, proactive plays from the Valkyries. They died off a few times, you're down in kills, but you are still looking for opportunities on the map to build up your gold lead and your influence. And the Valkyries have stabilized a bit. Yes, you fall 200-300 gold behind, but that's negligible.
I'm loving this. I think we're seeing better play from the Valks so far today than we've seen in the last few weeks. And a lot of improvement. Again, good presence on the map, like you said, proactive play, and I think presence of knowledge as to where they need to be. Numbers advantage even over there towards the Pyromancer. While it doesn't exactly go the way they maybe would have wanted to, and maybe lesson learned, hey, next time get the kill, maybe let's back away instead of go for the Pyro again. But I think that they have really opened up and showcased that they are here to fight. They're here to play, and so I'm excited to see if they can continue this kind of pressure onto the Bolts. It's going to need a lot to try and really start leveraging it, but look at this. Like, I love plays like this, waiting for Jake, trying to find the gank and just kill him off.
Great Riptide, and Tusky does connect. And awesome Jake evaporates, my goodness. And that's all set up by Kyrmi, Wowy, Gamma, the one Rue with the Riptide behind awesome Jake who makes that play happen. Unfortunately for the Valkyries, too early on in the game to immediately go to the Gold Fury. But stabilizes the gold a bit further. You got the Trebuchet, should have a good look at this tier 1 tower.
Yeah, this should, at minimum, get taken down because of the Trebuchet. It should be able to get the second shot off before the damage is there.
Come on! Oh, it wouldn't have killed it with that second shot, but it would have put it like
one
an
hit.
auto attack
and then,
away.
Wowy could have just waited for BaRRA to stroll to the right side of the map again, and maybe just go in and hit.
Small advantage then for the Valhalla Valkyries, but get the purple buff. That's really the big difference maker here. I also realized I never circled back on the Kukulkan thing.
You said his name 3 times. It means he's going to show up.
I hope not. That'd be scary.
It's Beetlejuice rules, right?
No chance I dodge Spirit of the Nine Winds here live in studio. Skin idea. Instead of Kukulkan, it's Cool-Kulkan.
And he's got
and
sunglasses.
He's got sunglasses and a leather jacket.
I'm sending this to Anna now because she'll just draw it. Dude.
Yeah, Cool-Kulkan is my brainchild. So if it happens, thumbs up. Valhalla Valkyries, Olympus Bolts, neither playing the Kukulkan here in this game, though we often see that style of pick paired with the Naja. Ven on the Eset. Has been effective with the circle protections up to this point, some to save his life, others to knock down some kills. LASBRA take the final judgment, or the ultimate from Kyrmi there. Not the final, there's no thought in here. As awesome Jake throws a stun towards Gamma, a dash in from LASBRA and from max range. Laz has one in his ultimate, and it's BennyQ, but BennyQ lives through the Aegis. That's unbelievable. Kyrmi will not. But the fact that Benny was able to survive, so nice for the Valhalla Valkyries, but you may lose Gamma and Wowy in exchange. The lockdown from Haddix, the disruption from the Horus. It's come to play in the left side jungle fight.
Haddix wanted to keep going. The rest of the team's pulling him back. I mean, that turnaround, he wanted to chase and try and get that kill on Wowy, recognizing maybe not worthwhile. BennyQ slips out, Wowy slips out. But who's going to fight over this Gold Fury right now? I mean, Aquarius could rotate in with the other two, but that just feels like it's going to be asking for trouble.
Yep.
I love the way that the Bolts play that. Again, good aggression. I want to say, I don't know if it was luck or if LASBRA just aimed incredibly well, but it feels like he was narrowly avoiding picking up Gamma versus being able to pick up BennyQ. And while they don't kill off Benny, getting the Huang to force his relics and run from the fight takes a lot of damage away from the Valkyries.
You know what's really tough for the Valkyries is that is the same exact type of moment that happened in Game 1. The game was largely equal the entire game, and then suddenly the Bolts find 2 picks. They rotate over to the Gold Fury. They get the Gold Fury. Pyromancer's down, but that's where the Bolts are headed. And suddenly you're a couple thousand gold behind. So as clean as you play, you can't be getting caught out around the big objectives that ultimately make the difference early on in these matchups. And Olympus Bolts are going to send their pressure right to the Pyro.
Dave, I'm going to do my due diligence.
Okay.
Because I remember at the end of the last art show, and Gamma, you got to give me the time to talk about it. Gamma's getting chased.
Were you about to talk about Kukulkan?
I was going to talk about the skin concept because at the end of the last art show, Inna's challenge to the community was to draw silly god concepts. I think that falls into that category. So instead of messaging her for it, I think someone in the community should draw it and send it to her.
Wow, what a shift this game has suddenly taken. A pick on the Gamma means Pyro, which means Frenzy, which means objective, Fire Giant Burn from the Olympus Bolts. Now Aquarius still has Eagle's Rally. Is that enough to stop the Olympus Bolts from completing this Fire Giant? I mean, Wowy's not over on this side of the map. If you can kill off Aquarius, which you might be able to do so, and look, Jake smartly stays with the Fire Giant, so you can get this kill onto Aquarius, turn right back, grab the FG, and the Olympus Bolts have juggled the objective perfectly. But none of the other Valkyries rotated over. Kyrmi's been farming up, BennyQ's been hanging out in mid. That was Aquarius's chance. Now Wowy will get a couple towers, but wasn't much of an attempt from the Valkyries to stop the FG.
Yeah, you're going to get a tier 2 for the Fire Giant, and while it opens up at least to Phoenix and
a
keeps
tier
things
2.
open, yeah, the tier 1, the tier 2. I mean, all these towers, the Valkyries are about to go from 6 to 0. So it's really interesting to see the decision because from first engage, there was definitely time to rotate in to help Aquarius. So that feels like a conscious call to not make the rotation. And in my mind, it means that the Valks aren't confident about their team fight versus the Bolts, but think that they are going to be able to defend pretty well. And I think with the Huang, with the Yemoja, Wowy in those team fights, I actually think that they're in a good spot to maintain maybe even a tier 2 defense line and try to put the Bolts into an awkward position. Now they're going to be fighting into a hefty gold lead at this point, so a couple of items, upgraded relics, things like that are going to be on the other side. But I think if you don't think you'll get there full power, if you think by the time everyone rotates in for the fight, Aquarius is dead and it makes things a little too awkward for you, then this is a good call to be in because you've got a good defensive comp. You can try to win a fight or at least delay the Bolts here, and you've opened up a Phoenix. So if you win a fight, you're able to at least get a bird back in your favor. So I think there's options for them. And while it might not be the best case scenario, I do think that it at least kind of continues onto a curve that they can play with.
And there's something good to come of a moment like that. A couple interesting items picked up for the Olympus Bolts. Shield of Regrowth for LASBRA synergizes very well with the Naja. Moments like this, you a little bit of extra CDR, you pick up Aquarius into the silence. The attempted read by Haddix, I admire it, but Aquarius went the other way. It would have been a kill for the Olympus Bolts. BaRRaCCuDDa and Jake being chased down by 4 members of the Valks. Bear and Jake will walk out just fine. And the other interesting item now, Pythag's piece for Awesome Jake. So Chronos put it into Pythag's piece, then the Sovereignty. So a little bit of defense for Awesome Jake, but decent power and a little sustain for the rest of the team.
And I feel like that just is partially because they've been getting away with so much that you can kind of lean more into something like a Pythag's piece. And with the itemization that they've got, I mean, you've got a lot of survivability now just built into the Bolts. I think it's going to be difficult in terms of healing or, you know, to deal with them. Gamma's got a little bit to match that, but the burst from the Bolts has been very powerful as well. I like it. I like standing defense under the tier 2. This one's maybe the worst one just because it's half health, but the other 2 are gone at this point, so you have to make the stand somewhere.
River's Rebuke, Tusky, those things make a difference in this fight. There's River's Rebuke, there's Tusky. But the Dharmic Pillars prevent engage, but Venenu the full damage of everything in that fight. And Wowy has found the first kill, and now Kyrmi chasing down the back line. But the silence from Jake, the spread out protections, keeps BaRRaCCuDDa alive. Kyrmi nearly found both backliners.
But look, BaRRa's relics and Vin's life worth more than Kyrmi at this point. You still lose the tier 2, But that's the kind of play, that's the defense I'm talking about here for the Valkyries. Again, maybe not the best case scenario to lose that that Fire Giant. I think the next one, you need to be more present because otherwise one bad fight loses you the game. But I think that that is a good spot for them to have at least mounted a stand, be able to get a big kill there for Kyrmi, even though it costs you your own relics. I think you get a lot pulled from the bolts. And so you're looking at 120 seconds for the FG respawn. That means beads down for Ven and for BaRRA. Opens up a lot of conversation around being able to capitalize on those timers right as the FG comes in.
Now, Gore, I made the mistake of calling Divine Judgment Final Judgment earlier on, which of course is Thoth Zone.
Yeah.
What do you think is ultimately more powerful?
Divine Judgment or Thoth's specific Final Judgment?
No, I just mean as like in.
No, but like the word Final Judgment, or like if it's Thoth's Final Judgment, you know what I mean? Like he's the one giving Final Judgment on you.
The word. Like,
okay.
is Divine Judgment.
Divine definitely trumps Final.
You think?
To me.
But Final's, it's it.
Final's it.
But Divine is godly. Don't know. That's a thinker right there.
That's a thinker.
That's one you'll have to
Well,
sit
if you
on
think
for a
about it, Final Judgment, because it's done by Thoth, is still divine in nature.
In a way. So maybe as abilities go.
That's why I wanted the clarification, because
Gotcha.
it's like, is it just the phrase?
I meant by
Final
the
Judgment?
phrase, but
Yeah.
when you look at it that way.
But if Thoth is passing Final Judgment on me, it's his divine Final Judgment.
Later. Right. So maybe in that case. There's no Thoth in this game, and we found a way to talk about it anyway. The Olympus Bolts in
I can
command
talk about
and control.
Anubis, too. He's got the scales that weigh like your heart versus a feather.
That's right. Something about
That's
Nem.
something about-
Nem has a lot of segues into different gods. So
Nim,
look,
maybe Nim is just the coagulation of Egyptian pantheon
Yeah, could
into
be.
one isolated
could
god.
be. But the Olympus Bolts have played this game so effectively. We're getting into this next Fire Giant, and they've got about 7,000 gold of an advantage. Now, I like the way the Valks played that last fight. River's Rebuke goes up. You realize you've got Ven. Send Tusky in for burst damage, and then Kyrmi can follow up. It was a great way to find a pick. But yes, you unfortunately lost your left side Phoenix after the fact. Fire Giant's up. But without the pick, the Bolts aren't going to be able to juggle it in the same way they did. Smart by the Valks to show up and show some presence.
Yeah.
Been a tough game for the Valkyries, though. Really, Gamma had a tough road up to this point. 0-5 on the Yemoja. Can always make that miracle play, though, and turn the game around.
Yeah, really the biggest thing that's separating them is not necessarily the 0-5. It's the 3 levels, that experience in support. You know, Jake just being tankier by keeping up a little bit better versus where, you know, Gamma's at, no upgraded starter, isn't going to be able to survive as long in certain moments because of the level gap between him and the carries. So that one's gonna be felt, but you've still got. I think you highlighted it well in the last team fight. You've got River's Rebuke. You've got the Riptides that have been really well placed by Gamma so far this game. You've got healing as well, and so I think if they can find their opening up against the Bolts here, then they're going to be able to make it look pretty good. It's just when and where that opening is. If the Bolts even give them one, all of that's up in the air.
Yeah, it's really down to which team.
This is the closest Valks game I think we've gotten to see.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That's also kind of mean, Gore. They're down by 8,000 gold.
Well, admittedly,
no,
the best one they had was 8K up over the Dragons.
Yes, absolutely. No, this is as far as the Valkyries' ability to step up and contest the fight. Valkyries are in a good spot in a way that they haven't been in some previous sets in recent memory. Like the fact that this is still a question. A good look for the Valhalla Valkyries, and they stabilize the early game. The Olympus Bolts, again, have just found those important picks that have turned into the objectives a bit later on. And that's got to be what the Valkyries are thinking about right now. Not giving up that important pick. One of your team members dies, Fire Giant's immediately getting pulled by the Bolts. And it might anyway. I mean, the Bolts are going to bait in Gamma, who is going to get ulted and has to use the beast of the River's Rebuke. But BennyQ finds a first kill, and it's on Awesome Jake. Gamma lives. Somehow the Yemoja is still in this fight, but Kyrmi will drop on the back end. The Bolts have traded out Kyrmi for Awesome Jake. Think that'll be a trade the Bolts are happy with. And wow, he's still here. Immobile on the Artemis. Now Ven's got a double kill. That is brutal. BennyQ left alone. Bolts too low to do the fire, but you're still going to end up picking up 3.
I mean, at this point, it's, yeah, a matter of when they can get the kill. And they have enough backup, no, with BaRRA gone.
What happened there?
Where they are. A lot of it is actually...
I'm trying to think of how that fight got disengaged.
Yeah.
A 1-for-1 trade. And then Wowy is still all the way up near the end of the fire giant.
It was well, yeah, that
the
one.
Edge,
that
the
one,
edge of the fire giant.
That one has to do with how the disengage happened. Aquarius turned running, yeah, so they're going to let him go. A lot of that starts, though, you know, good kill onto Jake. Kyrmi goes to the back line, and I think is trying to figure out who to fight. Vin, I believe, was around half health, maybe 3/4, and so could have been the easier target, but couldn't really get there. Unfortunately for the Valks, 4 members turned on Kyrmi, and their separation tactic does not work out well for him.
Aquarius! Oh, Aqua gets it done! Around the backside of the fire giant pit, Aquarius will send out the Scourge, and he'll deal the damage. And my goodness, the Valhalla Valkyries, a second lease on life. And my goodness, okay. A little bit of intrigue sprinkled back into this game, Gore, and the Olympus Bolts, they do end up getting a pick anyway. And now the 5v4 can knock down the Phoenix.
They've got a good defense. Now, can they
Scourge,
step up right
I can't
here?
believe that.
Man, stepping up right here. Look, 4v5, not going to be great. This is going to be the weirdest sentence I think I've ever said in a cast, at least for me in terms of concept. Gamma's low level and his like non-farm is actually helping them out here because Gamma's respawning in 5 seconds. So Gamma's coming back a little bit quicker than otherwise would be true. While that has been a very easy pressure point for the Bolts to lean on, I think having the 5-man is incredibly potent for him. Good defensive composition when the ult comes back from Gamma. Trying to knock down Phoenix is going to be difficult. You have to be careful. I'm looking at Wowy, I'm looking at Kyrmi in the left-hand jungle, just where they're at position-wise and making sure they don't overstay or overstep is going to be very important here. Losing one person on the Valkyries, I think, rips this game away from you. And we got to see that, again, during the last FG fight. You lose Kyrmi first, and then it becomes a pick after that point. Cool, we can get Gamma. All right, now we can lock down, unfortunately, Wowy after that point and continue the chase. So I think that they just need to be careful where they do step. Set up around these Phoenixes. You know, push where you want, make sure that it's going to be harder for the Bolts. I like that. But I think that when it comes to the Huang, you've got nice rooted abilities, good damage, really good setup. Kyrmi is able to slink around, has gotten to the backline pretty well, but can also just dash at them if you get the damage out there. That plus the River's Rebuke, the Tusky, as you had highlighted, the Caledonian Boar from Wowy, and Aquarius. I mean, being able to jump in with that Eagles Rally can really set themselves up for some good lockdown against the Bolts.
Got to make it stick, though. The Olympus Bolts, despite getting the fire giant stolen away by Aquarius, still extend their gold lead. They are 10,000 gold ahead, where they were about 8,000 walking up to that fire giant. How impactful will the miracle play from the Valhalla Valkyries solo laner be? Haddix is at 507. Ven has put on a clinic of an Eset game. BaRRaCCuDDa turns out the lights. And the Olympus Bolts turn their tails after dealing a good majority of that Phoenix's health and damage, but not looking to fight up against the Valkyries just yet.
Honestly, I'm surprised. I feel like the Bolts are in a position where they could probably turn around, collapse, and maybe just outright beat the Valkyries in a team fight. I don't know. It's really awkward at this point, because even though you've got this gold lead, it's, you know, individual plays in the team fight. Are they going up in Horus? No, Haddix.
Oh. I'm surprised the Bolts are backpedaling as hard as they are.
Yeah.
Primal Fury goes to the Valkyries. Now, maybe this team fight is what the Bolts have been looking for. They'll drop Dharmic Pillars on the back line. Doesn't connect for much on the Valkyries. As the Eagles rally, jumps forward. Aquarius stunned. Caledonian Boar through. Takes the beads away from LASBRA. And where is Haddix going to drop ship? Into the back line he goes. And a dash out to Awesome Jake. Keeps the Horus on the map. Kyrmi a double dash on the left side, and BennyQ takes a Spirit Ball as half of his health has gone down, and the Bolts gather together as 5, put their damage into Wowy, and again the Artemis left alone on the front of the fight after the rest of the Valkyries are leaving. Aquarius will eventually get burned down, and this makes the end of this game a lot more simple for the Olympus Bolts.
Look, you've got fire minions on right already pouring in as well. You don't even need the left side Phoenix, but it's going to be for good measure weakening down the Titan, regrouping as the Bolts. And in a 3v5, look, I like BennyQ. I like the damage that can come out here. But will you have enough? With your ult coming up, is it going to be strong enough to stop?
The early game of the Valhalla Valkyries has looked a lot better, but the Olympus Bolts were able to find priority picks in both games 1 and game 2 and extend out their gold lead. LASBRA will end this game with at least a double kill. Could be a triple onto BennyQ, but no, Ven will take his 8th kill of the game. And an onslaught from the Olympus Bolts hands the game, hands the set over. But again, I think if you're the Valkyries and you're grading yourself on the small things, the early games looked better.
Yeah.
But getting picks at priority times in the games, getting picked off, giving the Bolts over the Gold Fury in a couple back-to-back games, and the Pyro, that's where these things really change.
I think even teamfight moments in that one looked better for the Valkyries, so a lot of steps forward, strides forward for them. Unfortunately, we're still up against the number 2 team, right? And so the
Bolts
Bolts
are very consistent.
Are able to come in, look good. Really good setup from them. Look, I think that there was a lot to look at, and I didn't even talk about it during the game, but watching towards the end there, any damage that got dumped into LASBRA was nothing because he had such a tanky build.
Yep.
And so he would just kind of stand there, they'd throw damage into him, and then he'd still engage because he took an 1/8 of his health bar as opposed to the typical half that it maybe would have been with a different build. I think that they just had 3 really tanky targets, really good aggression crits coming out from BaRRA, and it became too difficult to try and really keep things going.
Banana Suits grabbed themselves a win here over the Valhalla Valkyries. Baby steps for the Valks. Got a few of those here in this game as well, but ultimately it's the Bolts who take the 2-0 win. That's it for Gormizer and I on the cast. J-Mac and Trelly on the desk. We'll close out our day.
Yeah, thank you so much. The Banana Suit Bolts find themselves a 2-0 over the Valkyries and close out their weekend, close out our weekend of the SPL on a nice victory. Again, shining moments for the Valkyries. Their early game definitely stepping up, but still same problems. Once we get to these mid-late game team fights, past these 15-20 minute marks, the Bolts just have the superior team fight, the superior team play on the whole. They're able to find themselves the 2-0 dub.
Are we really going to start calling them the Banana Boys?
If they're going to keep wearing the tracksuits.
I mean, BaRRA likes the bananas. That's his thing. But I don't think it's the whole team. The Bolts just happen to be yellow. Either way, obviously the Bolts look good. And I think the Valks did have a lot that they could take back from this game, watching the game back, that sort of thing. Of moments where they did things very well, like the early picks and that sort of thing. But, as the casters highlighted, getting picked at opportune moments. Aquarius had a nice FG steal, but what do you do after the fact, that sort of thing. So still, definitely have some things to work on. You got to highlight Ven and Haddix both had a very high kill game here, and for good reason. Ven also topping the damage charts for his team. Was just so effective on this Eset. So the Bolts, they might not have a good win rate against the Eset, but Ven's got a pretty solid one.
Yeah. Again, if you can't beat them, join them. If you're going to keep getting beaten by it, you might as well learn how to play it yourself. And well, I'm sure Ven is no stranger to being able to play a god like this. The Olympus Bolts come out with a 2-0, I believe is 8-2 for the final KD of Venenu. And then Haddix ended with, I believe it was a 6-0 for himself. So great games by both of those players. Great gameplay all around by the Olympus Bolts.
Nope. I'm not giving credit to the Naja.
No.
LASBRA is phenomenal.
What?
LASBRA is phenomenal, but I will not give credit to the Naja.
The
all right?
slander.
I'm not slandering LASBRA. He's great. I think he had a great set, but the Naja, every time someone came up, they came down at the same HP. Like their HP 5 was healing them while they were up in the sky. All right, if he did more.
What do you expect? Look at the build anyway. He didn't build a bunch of power.
That's what I'm saying.
He went 3-1. How could you be upset with the pick like that? 3-1 and 10.
He got both of those last 2 kills.
What would it take for you? What would it take for you, damage number wise, for you to give the respect to the Naja pick?
15K.
14.8.
That's what I thought. There we go. Good. So we don't.
He beat 3 out of the 5 players on the Valks in damage, though.
All right, listen again.
And also 21K mitigate. He mitigated more than 3 of those same 3 players.
All right, you can't tell me if 6 previous junglers weren't off the table that LASBRA was going to the Naja there, but I guess it does get the first win, right? Because Scream had the 2 losses, and now LASBRA gets the first Naja win of this phase. So there's a positive there, I suppose.
Not the phase, the year.
The year?
The year. That was the first Naja win of the year. Like I said, the only other 2 times we saw it was Scream, and that was back in phase 1.
Well, okay. So the first Naja win of the year, and I don't expect many more to come.
Many more Naja games or many more wins with Naja?
Hopefully both. I mean,
right.
It's not terrible. There is some application for it, and LASBRA showed us exactly how to use it, right? You set up for your team, and or you use it as just like okay, we need the rest of the squad to sort of gather around here. I'll use this ultimate in the meantime. It's just a different play style. Obviously, I like to look at LASBRA as this sort of hard carry, getting lots of damage, lots of kills. But, you know, whatever works. If you can facilitate your team in this way, I'm only joking. I'm only half serious. That's the way.
Only half serious. LASBRA with the setup for his team to allow his mid laner, Venenu, the 8-2 man from this game, will be our post-game interview for the Olympus Bolts. Congrats on the win. I got to know, man, what's in the fanny pack?
Well, right now, nothing, but
Nothing?
usually the mouse.
Okay, so the mouse is what's held in there.
Yep, right here.
Does BaRRA keep anything extra, like a pack of nuts or something like that, maybe?
Probably. That guy puts everything in there.
Who knows what's in his fanny pack out there? Are you hearing this Naja slander?
Yeah, that's a terrible god. So
Okay, never mind then. All right,
Yeah.
seems that I'm the only one who ended up liking the Naja out here. But you guys look good in your game. A little bit of a rough kind of early start out of there. You know, going against a team like the Valks, it really does feel like they've upped that kind of early game for them. But it seems like your team still kind of has that mid game dialed down in.
Yeah, I mean, they came out with, I guess, a little bit more just kind of jam it, and then we're like just chilling and farming, and then we win.
Let's get to the late game. Now, one stat that was brought up is that out of all the games that Haddix has played Horus, it seems that only one of those has been a loss. It's kind of similar to Jake. So maybe you guys figure out like what your power gods are, like those 80 to 90% win rates. We maybe see a team like that form at some point.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, he's just a Horus differ, you know?
Yeah,
Not really much you can do.
Yeah, so far good games on the Horus, good games out of you in general. Congrats on your 2-0 victory, Venenu. Thanks for stopping by. Let's get back with the team celebrate.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
The Horus differ.
He said Naja's not good too. I told you.
You know what? I guess I will stand alone and wallow in my puddle of Naja tears for everybody at this point. That's just me saying it. I end up love playing that guy. It's one of the few gods that I actually do play whenever I do play jungle. Sometimes I still play him support too, but this time around at least went 3-1 for LASBRA. The Olympus Bolts go 2-0 over the Valhalla Valkyries. And that wraps up our games for the day. So let's take a look at the schedule and see what you have missed. Because if you are just now tuning in, I'm sorry, you have missed
Oh no, we've
Week
seen it
6
all.
of the SPL. At least you've missed Sunday's SPL games. 2-0 for the Jade Dragons, a 2-1 for the Solar Scarabs, the big upset of the weekend. Probably the biggest talking point that'll go moving in at least into week number 7. And then a 2-0 for the Olympus Bolts over the Valhalla Valkyries. That wraps up our triple header Sunday. And now we can take a look at the standings to see how things have shifted up. With these last two games, really not a whole lot. I mean, the Camelot Kings still at the top of the charts. Solar Scarabs still sitting at that 7th seed. Olympus Bolts 2nd. Valhalla Valkyries in the 8th seed, respectively still. So as far as these last two games, no real shakeups that direction. The only one that we did have was earlier on when we had the Dragons and the Levi's face off. And the Jade Dragons, with their win, bumped themselves up into that 5th seed now.
Yeah, it just goes to show how close this league is. Every time we're on the desk and we get to look at these standings, it's always the same conversation because it still holds true. Any one of these teams can take a set. Any one of these teams can take a game off of the opposition. It really just shows, you know, who's able to adapt to the meta thus far. I'm not gonna say surprised because the Scarabs have always had that it factor, right, where they're able to take sets off people. But for them coming out and taking down the Kings, that's got to be a big boost of confidence.
Yeah, that's a major win for the Solar Scarabs mental and to continue to move on, which we get to take a look at the schedule next week. Wow. What a Friday we get. What a treat there. Jade Dragons, Camelot Kings, Bolts, and Levi's to start the week out. How's the end of the week look? Titans, Valkyries, all right. Jade Dragons, Scarabs, that'll be good. Only Warriors, Bolt. We got a whole pretty good series of games out there. Even Warriors, Valks, and Scarabs, Titans. Week 7's looking pretty good, Trelly.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an exciting time for some Smite, and I can tell you one thing, you don't want to miss it.
No, you definitely don't want to miss. If you do, fortunate enough, there's usually a recap every single week. So if you do miss something, if you missed out on anything here, don't worry, there's going to be a recap that comes out later on in the week for you guys.
Yeah, but I heard whoever hosts that thing, he's lame.
Yeah, he changed sets. He went from a desk to a couch.
Yeah,
completely.
I liked it on the desk,
Yeah,
but on the couch.
the desk was nice. Very nice and roomy. The couch is a little bit cramped up there, but all the while, thank you guys so much for coming out into these events. I mean, and watching the SPL, it has been so competitive. I know we keep saying it time and time. Charlie Lewis just said, I'll keep saying it too. These games are getting so close. The fact that we look at the end of Season 8 and it was a clear top 5,
Right.
and now we're in Phase 2 of this season and it's a clear top 7 that are still battling out between each other. It's amazing. You're not going to want to miss out on Week 7 of the SPL. That's going to be kicking off on Friday. So on behalf of myself, Charlie, Casters, all production behind the scenes, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you for next week.